We are on the cusp of a major social change. Do you feel it? Even if you don't, make no mistake, change is coming, and it is going to be unforgettable. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Hart, and here on Prime Spark, where we work with and on behalf of women over 55, I want to help you find that spark that will ignite your way forward, reflect your gifts to the world, and illuminate your path through this next stage of life. Through these podcast conversations, I hope to inspire you to see how you can make a significant contribution to some of the gnarly problems that are facing us right now. Join me, and together let's discover our Prime Spark. Hi, and welcome to Prime Spark. I'm Sarah Hart, and I'm so happy you're here with us. Prime Spark is designed for women over 55 or close, with a goal to help us all live our happiest, most fulfilling and productive lives, now and in the future. The mission of Prime Spark is to change the way our society sees and treats older women. That's a big mission, which only means we all need to be involved, and we need to get started now. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Deb Miller, a woman whose work I greatly admire. Dr. Deb Miller is a mental health therapist who has worked with children, adults, and couples for over 30 years in private practice. She has conducted multiple presentations on topics related to mental health challenges, fostering authentic relationships, and challenging sexism in adolescent girls. Recognizing the gap in resources specifically tailored to those who have betrayed trust, she published More Than Sorry: 5 Steps to Deepen Your Apology After You Have Committed Infidelity. Related to this Prime Spark audience, she wants to communicate to seniors how, through the exploration of past transgressions, one can gain wisdom that will lead to stronger and more intimate personal connections. Dr. Miller identifies as a member of the caboose generation, having recently followed her grown children and grandchildren from Missouri to Pennsylvania. She is in the process of establishing new relationships in the 55-plus community she and her husband have moved into. And don't get her started on sharing the power of connecting through pickleball. Hi, Deb. I'm so happy you're here today.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. So just in getting started, let me ask you, do you experience getting older? And if so, what is that experience? And if not, why is it that you think that you don't?
Well, obviously, like most of your guests and can relate to and your audience, I do experience ageism in my body. There's definitely some more aches and pains and some limitations. But I have a naivete or maybe it's a superficiality. I really don't feel old. I don't think of myself as old. But I also have a really powerful defense mechanism of denial, I think, because there is obviously days go by and age happens. But I also feel grateful in the sense that I have a lot of energy and a lot of great network and a lot of interests, and I have the space now of time to explore more and to figure out more. So that's kind of how I experience ageism. I have been lucky enough not to have to fight any economic issues in terms of losing jobs because of my age or any of that. And I certainly hurt for those women and men who experience that. Very scary.
I don't know, Deb. I don't, I'm probably, maybe I have the same thing, but I don't think it's a denial mechanism. I think that we experience ourselves as alive and vibrant and happy. And I mean, if we have luxury of having all those, enough of things that we don't have to worry about our basic survival needs,
Right.
then I think we get to this point and we're fine. And if we can just ignore what everything around us seems to be saying about what it means to be older, then I think we're better. I think we're enjoying a lot of things in a lot of ways we didn't before. Yeah, the body gets older. But that's the way it is.
Yeah, I think there's that line between acceptance that there are going to be different aches and pains and limitations, perhaps, but there's also embracing the journey, embracing what's next, and embracing and appreciating what's around me and you. That's working. That's positive. That's exciting.
I sometimes say, and firmly believe, that really getting older is a huge gift. That, honestly, not a lot of women or people in general in our world have the opportunity to experience. And we do. And so it is a gift to have the opportunity to get older and to stay here for a while. So,
yeah. Yeah.
I'm fascinated with your book, Deb. And I can imagine you get a lot of pushback from it, because tell me why you think it is that in one's senior years, past transgression should be revisited, especially if they've been long buried or unexposed.
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Well, I think it's part of the maturity and the authenticity of growth, and to recognize that we all have some dark shadows in our past, whether it be a betrayal of a spouse or a loved one through an affair, or whether it be through gossip or through saying hurtful things to someone. I mean, we can make a huge list of things that you can look back on and go, well, gee, I wish I hadn't done or said that. And so it's very easy. We all have a very strong ability to push things under the rug, and yet it sits with us. And so to accept the challenge of just looking at it, and I don't mean go and tell the world, I don't mean go confess your sins to everyone that hears, but it is important to recognize that you need to continue to look at what you did in the past in order to recognize how you've grown and what is it that you want to, how is it that you want to be different? So many people, when I was a therapist, would come to my office and, typically the couple would come in and the one person would say he or she had an affair and I want to know why. And of course, the person that had the transgression or the infidelity would look down and just say, I don't know. I don't know why. And honestly, that's some truth to that, because they hadn't looked at it. It's so easy to look in the mirror and not see yourself. And so it's the ability to embrace our dichotomy, embrace our yin yang, to embrace our good, bad, and to embrace all of ourselves is important as we mature, in the sense of, again, intimacy. I think as we get older, our relationships become so important. And if we aren't able to connect with people at a deeper level, then we're going to be lonely and get isolated. So in order to connect with other people at a deeper level, we have to make sure we have connected with ourselves. And so what I found was many people had never told their story. Now, I had one client came and she only came one time. And she just said, I just need to confess this. I had an abortion, 40 years ago or something like that. She just needed to say it out loud. And that's all she needed, just to hear it, to see that I wasn't going to judge her, that I was going to applaud her for being honest and open, and to validate, that those memories were painful. So that's the beauty of looking at it at this age as we grow. is to recognize that we all have shadows. We all have parts of ourselves that we wish no one else would know about. But, and again, I'm not asking you to go out and confess. I'm just asking you to take the courage to look at yourself and to ask yourself questions. And that answer to why you cheated, why you hurt someone else, that's going to evolve. There's no right, wrong answer. There's no black, white answer to that. And so the courage to every so often go, 30 years ago, how would I look back at that part of me then? Why did I choose to do that? And how have I grown since then? What do I know now that's different? So there's a lot about, I call it navel gazing in my book, the ability to look inward and have the courage to explore who you are and how you are. You know, it's taking those quizzes out of the Cosmo magazine back in the day that we were all curious to take. And, but take it at a more serious level, And ideally, though, you do have a confidant. Is there someone out there who knows your story? Because there's something about sharing it openly with someone. It could be a best friend, it could be a sibling, it could be a parent, someone that loves you no matter what and accepts you. But there's something about processing that, again, to build intimacy and a deeper connection with others, is to say it out loud.
So is this right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, in order to get the benefit of looking at it and really getting it out, you don't necessarily have to, quote, confess it to the person that you transgressed against. It just needs to somehow come out with somebody. Can one do it with oneself?
Yes. I mean, that was part of my book, was that, through journaling, reflection, but I do encourage you to write the letter of apology. You don't have to mail it, but it just reflects that you're going to think about it, because the words "I'm sorry" are nice, but they're not enough. They're not enough because they don't reflect any empathy for who you hurt and how you understand and how you hurt them. And it doesn't reflect how you have grown and what you have intended to do now to be different. So yes, if I'm working with a couple in marriage, they obviously need some apology directly to them. That would be the message. But let's say there was an affair 30 years ago and no one ever learned about it. Well, you don't want to go back and tell. It would, you have to think about it. Would this hurt my significant other more to know now? And so, but yet you've got to recognize carrying that secret is exhausting. And yes, we can shove it away and we can be a little, we don't have to look at it a lot, but it's just with us. And so there's something very magical and spiritual about saying it out loud. I mean, I'm not Catholic, but there's something to the confessional. I mean, about admitting it, it's that ability to be honest. And so, yeah, if you have to make amends, it's that intentionality, and it may be internal for you.
I'm sure that you have worked with couples where there's been infidelity on one or both sides,
Right.
and it may not have been known at the time,
Right.
But whoever had the transgression is wanting to confess it. Does that happen very often?
There's not great data about all that. Like everyone in this room, raise your hand if you have an affair. No one's going to raise their hand, So yeah. I don't have any way to assess that. I know that there's something helpful if you work with a person who did cheat and you work with them as a therapist and let them tell their story and learn from it and grow from it. It is a release. And so they have to really process telling, because there's also the level of, okay, maybe my spouse knows, but do I tell my children? Do I tell other family members? And again, most people come to therapy after affairs because they don't want their world to know. They don't want to change how others perceive them. And that's fair. That's fair. I mean, we are all growing people, and we all have a story, and we all have, made mistakes. And so we don't want to get put in a box like, the scarlet letter of, wearing the red A on your back all day. You don't want that. That's not helpful. That's not growth producing. Yeah.
Right. I would think that I could imagine that confessing it to the person that you transgressed against could be very healing, but it could take a while.
That's the judgment, because they may be like, oh, that's what was going on back then. Now I get it. Now I know I wasn't crazy. Now I know why I felt so critical of myself, assuming that because you really weren't present for me. There may be some really helpful thing of that, but you have to critique where you're at today. And that's the balance with living in the present versus living in the past. Yes, the past affects who we are today, but we have to keep asking today, would this be helpful to know, to share, to process?
And who would be helpful for?
Yes.
Because I've had, I'm not a therapist, but I've had people or friends say, that they've had very difficult things happen to them in their families as they were growing up. And they don't see any reason to bring it up now when their parents are very, very elderly.
Yeah.
And that is really tricky, I think.
So tough, because then they're often in the role of taking care of the parent, and they're still angry at them. They're still hurt because there's been no amends made to them. So I guess the challenge is to put yourself in that, flip that perception and make sure you're not the person where your children or loved ones are like, do I have to take care of her now that she's needing me? Because I'm still mad at her. She didn't, she was a horrible mother, or she was a horrible friend, or, so you want to make sure that you've taken care of that. Again, how to have honest, intimate relationships with others, which means you have to share vulnerability. You have to, take risks and talk about how you're feeling and what you regret. And, those conversations that, we don't have on a daily basis.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And some of us never have, actually.
Or never have.
Which is very sad, I think, but some of us never have. Yeah.
But it's interesting, I think, if you have the courage to initiate that kind of conversation with a friend, it gives them permission to reciprocate. And, I've had so many unplanned conversations with friends, where I thought we were just chit chat. How are your grandkids? How's work? How la la la. And then it goes shoot. And I don't know exactly how it got there, but it's wonderful. And those are I found that over COVID, doing so many Zoom conversations with my friends or FaceTime. They were deeper because we were all kind of in this existential crisis as we were all locked away and not sure how the world was going to turn out, and those really were so special.
Yeah. Yes. There were. I mean, I've had conversations with people, well, even during it, when we talked about what's the plus of this? I mean, there's so much negative, but what's the plus? Because I think there's been huge pluses. There have been huge negatives, but there's been big pluses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So talking about risk, Deb, you and your husband took a big risk in moving from Missouri, Pennsylvania, into a 55 plus community.
Yeah.
So how is that being for you?
Yeah. We moved kind of near the end of the intense COVID period. And so it was so exciting to be with our children again and not always around the fire pit outside because they were afraid to let us in the home, so that was positive. And it was just kind of a whirlwind initially. And it felt fine. It felt fine. We were kind of gotten programmed how to isolate with COVID. So it was just fine. It was kind of exciting to create a new home and, decorate and get established. so finding other people in this community is because some people have moved from 10 miles away, but there are many of us in the caboose generation who have also come following kids. And so it's nice to connect with them and to learn their stories and to find out more. And it's a process. But I do cling to my friends, my old friends, the ones that are back in St. Louis and other places. It's lovely to have them as my backup. So we try to travel as much as we can see them, but pickleball has been hysterically fun and an easy way to like connect with people and laugh at yourselves. And,
I want you to talk about pickleball. So tell us about pickleball.
Well, like in all communities, there's like one person out there who's the organizer, and you're like, where should I stand? Okay. And so she got us all out to learn pickleball, and they're teaching us the rules. And there were a lot of us that were curious. It was a good way to be outside because it was still COVID-y, so we could do it. And out of that evolved this addicted group of people. I don't think I'm quite there yet. I only play once or twice a week, and they're like, 4 or 5 times a week. I'm not day. And so it becomes very jovial. It's for people all ages and all fitness levels and all geographic, again, story. And do I know all their stories? Not really, but it's a great beginning. It kind of reminds me of, when you're in school, like elementary school, all the way up through high school, it was just easier to connect with an activity, a shared activity.
Right.
And so that's been really nice. Very nice.
So the best part of pickleball for you is the social aspect, and especially the ease of getting to know new people where you moved into. I suspect you didn't know anybody. Did you know anybody?
No, we knew no adults. We only knew our children. We're like, we promise we're not going to hang on you for our social life completely. But yeah. I mean, I was ready a while back. It took my husband a little longer. COVID kind of inspired him to go, you're right. Why are we here? But we're still struggling with finding community in this beyond pickleball, church, for example, we were very connected with our church in St. Louis. And so we're really struggling, and church shopping, as I'm sure your audience can is not fun. It's just trying to dumb luck trip into the right community that fits, your beliefs and your comfort level, et cetera. So I feel like we're still there. I mean, it's been a little less than 2 years, and, thank goodness for GPS. I really still don't quite know my way around, but, we're trying to embrace it as an adventure. And coming up from the Midwest, we knew nothing of the East Coast, and, exploring, geographically other beautiful places over here. That's been fun. It's been fun.
5 years ago now, I moved into it's a retirement community. Actually, it's more than 55 plus, and it was a choice, and I thought about it long and hard before I did it. And it was a good choice, and I'm very happy, and I'm glad I'm here. And But initially, it was sort of, what am I doing here? I'm not this old. Yeah. And there was also a feeling of, this is an overstatement, but a feeling of sort of going back to a dormitory or something. I mean, it was, there's just, on the one hand, with COVID, that was wonderful because there were people.
Right. Yeah.
And on the other hand, there are always people, And so it's
not for everyone, right? But yeah. And now you're good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was very good actually during the lockdown, because anytime you go outside, there would be people outside and you could talk to them outside. And if I had still been in my house, I loved my neighbors, but it would have been much, much harder to make contact. It would just have been very difficult. So,
yeah, we had transitioned in St. Louis from a big house to a high rise before we moved here. So we were used to communal living, as we call it. And we were good candidates. We loved the energy and the seeing people in the mailroom or the elevator or wherever. Yeah, we were we kind of embraced it. It was matched who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Deb, tell me about things that you have done in your life that you are particularly proud of. What are 2 or 3 things that are
Well,
really highlights for you
yeah.
of
I
things
mean,
you've done?
as I've already talked about, relationships are so important to me. So certainly I'm so very proud of the fact that we've raised 2 children who are in turn raising great kids themselves. And I'm proud of the marriage that my husband have had for 46 plus years. But I'm also proud of my career. I mean, I started off as a teacher and a school counselor and a drug-free school specialist and working with adolescent girls and feeling their self-concept and empowerment. And then my private practice. And it's just been, I'm just proud that I feel like I've touched people's lives and that I'm still curious, that I have this fascination for knowing people and learning of their stories. And yeah. So
One of the
it's
things
one,
I'm sorry.
no, I was just gonna say not any one specific thing, just in general.
Right.
Yeah.
In reading your biography, your bio, one of the things you talked about was sexism for adolescent girls, and I am so concerned about that. Do, I suspect I'm a bit older than you are, and I came up through the women's movement of the 60s and 70s. And sometimes I mean, no question that we've made some strides, certainly not enough. The other night I saw, she asked,
Yeah.
or no, she said, she didn't
She
ask, she said,
yes.
and I was so sad and angry and everything else at the end of it. I thought, gee, many Christmas. I mean, how long, how long are we going to be in this? And so, what is your experience with adolescent girls and what they're facing?
It's the challenge of developmentally, especially middle school years, the insecurity, the lack of self-confidence, the desire to fit in and be part of the group is what we have to realize. It just is. But we also have to raise their awareness of it. It's like, kids can get that their brains aren't fully formed till they're 25 or something. And that their decision making at times may be very adult-like and other times not. And so for them to kind of get it and to hear it, but also to feel the energy of acceptance. So these conferences would be 500 girls, and we talk a lot about self-concept and relationships and trying to be non-judgmental, because they are so judgmental of themselves and therefore of others. And so then there becomes these competitions that aren't helpful for anyone. But I think it's interesting with the media and with understanding the sexism is ongoing and that they have to find their voice. And that's the challenge. I think for women, I'll generalize. I think for us to find our voices, that we're not, if we find our voices, sometimes we're called the bitch, that we're too aggressive. But then there's, we've got to figure out how to be more assertive and say out loud what we think and feel, and how to say no. And it has to be talked about. You have to teach it almost. I mean, they know it, but you have to give them energy to really follow through with it and take action on that. Yeah, there's lots of good information out there. And I think that, and a lot of empowerment for girls that's going on, and it needs to go on forever, because it's not like we're done. Oh, we're done. We fixed it. No, it's just it's going to be an issue indefinitely. But I think the challenge of this is also not to villainize men. It's that funny line between being guarded and yet recognize that not all men are evil, awful predators. How to handle an awkward situation. There's some really great adolescent sex educators out there who talk really openly with girls and boys about relationships, acknowledging the hormones are thriving. They have to figure out what to do about all that, Yeah.
I was just curious. I was just ready to ask you, how do you teach that? I mean, because it's, you can hear things, but it's sort of like reading how to play golf,
Yeah, unless you get there. I
you
know.
know.
Yeah, I
And
know.
yeah, it's good to read how to play golf
Yeah.
because you have good information, but you gotta get out and play
Right.
golf
I
to
gotta
learn
try
how to
it.
play
Yeah.
golf. So it
Yeah.
seems to me that I mean, when you said how to say no, you can talk about that forever, but how do you? I mean, when you have seen things, I mean, do you do role playing or how do you teach that?
But there's so many different ways. I mean, there's lots of just, small group work, like talk about your relationship with guys. Have any of you ever faced any scary situations? How did you handle it? And yeah, there's role play. Let's act that out. I remember, yeah, we used to bring into this conference one woman. She was a sex educator that worked with teens. I mean, she had a great curriculum. She just, and I think a lot of school counselors do that. I think they can get to them more in middle school than they can in high school, because in high school they got to get their credits and they're busy. So the middle school years are really key, and then girls are getting older quicker, developing early. You almost have to start. We started working with girls in 5th grade, because their hormones were already kicked in. Their puberty is happening. So it's there. But I think that's another thing for our generation, is to recognize we probably all still have that same story. We also have this memory of that awkward situation, whether it be back in high school or college or beyond, and did you ever talk about it with anyone? And that's a good acknowledgement that it's powerful to say things out loud and to get support from others.
It comes back, a lot of it comes back to that, doesn't it? To talk about.
It
Yeah.
does. Yeah. Yeah. The more we bury our secrets, the heavier they get and the bigger they get.
Yes. So in addition to pickleball, in addition to seeing your children and grandchildren,
Yes.
what are things you're doing now that are most meaningful for you?
Well, it's funny how the day goes by pretty quickly. I luckily have a few clients virtually. I love that. So I still do a little bit of work. I don't think I have another book in me, but yet maybe there's a magazine article writing. I don't know, want to say stupidly, but I signed up to take Spanish, and I'm painfully getting through it, and yet I'm learning. But that's been work. And I just read a lot. I just love to read and take classes online and things like that. But I am looking for ways to give back. I'm that's my quest, is to figure out some volunteerism that would be meaningful, and yet selfishly, it wouldn't interfere with my travel. So that's the good news, bad news of that, right?
Any big dreams you have that you haven't realized yet?
Yeah, you would ask that, and to kind of warn me you were going to ask me, and I'm really, of course, I'd love to go back to Europe some, but if I don't get there, it's okay too. No, my dream is that, my friends and family all do well, that they find joy, that they find connection.
I don't know that there's anything more joyful than having raised good kids who are raising good kids, because we haven't made the world the easiest place to do that.
No. And yet, not to judge people whose kids are struggling. I mean, there's so many factors in how one's life turns out. And, with the best intentions and maybe even the best practices, some kids turn out great, some people don't, some people struggle. And so, yeah, that's hard. That's hard to watch. And that's the women's theory. I know you probably have studied that a little bit, but, unfortunately or fortunately, we kind of identify ourselves through our relationships. And so if our children are doing well, then we're fine. If they're struggling, we hurt, and so it's finding the boundaries that are healthy and not so self-destructive.
Well, selfishly, I would hope that you would continue with at least some of your work with adolescent girls, because you're just so non-judgmental and so straightforward. And I think those two things are so helpful for middle school girls.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
so. That would
Thank
be
you. Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
that would be my big dream.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Well, again, I'm trying to find my network here and figure out who has a door they'd open for me to walk through
Right.
with that kind of work. So maybe I'll put that closer to the forefront of my intentions.
Put that in the idea hopper.
Mhm.
So, Deb, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, how could they do that?
I think the best way is through my website, which is www.drdebmiller.com. DRDEBMILLER.com.
So it's without any punctuation, Dr. Deb Miller at gmail.com.
Say that 10 times fast. Yes. Yeah. No, you got it. That's it.
Yeah. Good.
But there's a web that describes my book and how to order it and a little bit about who I am and contact information. So I'd love to hear from anybody.
Well, I would think that the book could be really helpful to a lot of us, and not just with a transgression of infidelity, but any kind of thing that we did in the past that we're deeply ashamed of and haven't talked about. And we've all got that stuff.
We do.
We've all got that stuff. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Sarah.
Well, that's our time. Please join us again. You can find our Prime Spark podcast on every popular outlet. You can find out more about Prime Spark at www.primesparkwomen.com. Thank you so much to my guest, Dr. Deb Miller. And remember, you can find her at drdebmiller@gmail.com.
No, doc. Oh, that too.
Say again?
Well, my website's .com.
.com. Yeah.
Yeah. But, you're saying my email?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I meant your website.
Yeah, .com.
Yeah, .com.
You got it. Yeah, they'll find me.
Good. Thank you for being with us. Spread tolerance and love. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to stay updated, you can head over to my website, primesparkwomen.com, and get my free Spark Guide, 7 questions to ignite your spark, to help you discover your own spark. See you in the next episode.